Welcome to the Long Take Review, a film podcast with one eye always on the Oscars race. I'm your host, Jen Bankard, and I'm here with my friend and Shai Halud of New Movies, P.T. McNiff. How's
Hello,
it going,
Jen.
P.T.?
It's going great, and I think I speak for both of us that feel woefully underprepared for this podcast, but we're ready to have some fun and talk about future movies.
I co-sign all of that. We are here with our year in preview episode. This is an episode we've been meaning to do for a while, and actually most Oscars podcasts do these immediately, like the recording is still hot from the Oscars, and they sort of say, okay, let's already start predicting for next year. So we're kind of, partly riding the coattails on that, but also probably just getting psyched for movies that are going to come out throughout the rest of the year. So what we're going to do is first to have a general conversation, share our thoughts about like what have we heard that's going to have Oscar buzz potentially. Granted, a lot can change between now and next year, but what are we hearing is people are on people's predictions lists, and then we're actually going to try to do a little draft where we each get to select 5 films that we're the most excited for, and spoiler, there's going to be some hot competition for some of these because PT and I have fairly similar tastes in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's what you have to look forward to. But first, actually, just want to do a super quick movie news check-in because we always like doing that at the top of the show. So do you have anything going on? Any new trailers that just came out or news that's hitting the trades that we want to inform our listeners about?
I'm also underprepared for this part because I've been looking so far forward. I forgot what just happened. I will say, since we last spoke, I went to go and see the Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves movie, which I don't know if we'll have the opportunity to record an episode on, but I feel like we certainly could because it was great. It's super fun, and I had a great time with that. And yeah, I feel like there's some Marvel movies. The Marvels trailer landed.
What did you think about that?
Well, I've been soft on the Marvel. Maybe I don't know if that's the right way of phrasing it, but I've been out a little bit. I've been a foot out of sort of post Endgame Marvel stuff. So I'm not fully caught up. I hate to say I've not actually watched Miss Marvel yet. So I feel like there's references and obviously characters that I was like, that must be from that show I haven't seen. I like the idea of a body switch comedy, like being like the heart of this version of a superhero movie. It's inherently funny that they're going to have Nick Fury in what looks like the serious secret invasion, spy thriller show on Disney Plus, and then straight into Freaky Friday or vice versa or whatever, with characters swapping around. So I'm into it. Like I want it to be good. I will go see it in a theater. That said, it's I'm not like as in as I might have been if it was like when the first Captain Marvel came out. If this had been the trailer, I think I would have been like losing my mind.
And you're in good company. I mean, every single movie podcast that I listen to, they all have superhero movie fatigue. I really enjoyed Ms. Marvel. I know it wasn't a perfect series structurally. I think the pacing had some issues, but I really loved Iman Vellani, I think is how you say her name. And I thought she was really great. And I think she's just a bright star in the MCU right now that has a lot of potential. And so I'm really excited to see her in a feature film. I just thought it looked like a fun time. This movie it's not blowing my mind. This trailer is not blowing my mind, but it does look like a fun time. And I like the sort of reluctant team up aspect of it. So I think it definitely piqued my interest. It does not deserve all of the internet troll ire that it is receiving.
No.
Right now at all.
Which sadly is completely predictable from a movie with 3 women superhero leads, 2 of them being women of color, and the other one being Brie Larson. Just like for some reason, the target of a particular level of crappy chud rage. So yeah, I want to see Miss Marvel. I'm waiting for when I'm excited, and so maybe it'll be I'll watch it in the lead up to it.
I will see that if you're gonna see the Marvels, the film, you definitely like prerequisite is watching.
Yeah.
Like even just in terms of explaining the plot premise, I feel like you need to see Miss Marvel. Which whether or not that's a good thing, if that should be is another debate for another day. But that I will say, if other folks listening are like you and have not caught up with all the Disney Plus shows, this one in particular is like you're probably going to be like, huh, what's happening? If you haven't seen at least for a third of it, because Ms. Marvel is one of the 3 Marvels, and so I feel like if you haven't seen her series, then you might be kind of confused as to like what her deal is and why she's there. But anyway, so the movie news that I had is Super Mario Brothers still crushing it at the box office. It's about to hit $1 billion, I think. That's what I saw in, I believe it was the Hollywood Reporter this morning. So it's almost there. They can't quite call it. It's like it's on the verge of hitting $1 billion, I think. Have you gotten to see this movie yet?
I have not had a chance to go and see it. I was sort of like had put it in the sort of corner of like, yeah, it'll be on streaming at some point and I'll watch it. I love Mario. That'll be fun. And now it's made like all this money. And I feel like people are happy with it. I haven't heard a lot of people saying like, no, you gotta see it. Like it's actually secretly amazing, which is sort of what I heard about the Dungeons and Dragons movie. Again, different sort of target audiences, maybe.
Well, I would say for a closer comp, I think it's not Puss in Boots: The Last Wish or the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because that was like not on my radar at all, and then everyone was like, no, you got to go see this, it's amazing. I did, and then I was like, yes, that was amazing. This is more like I had a fun time. It holds a special place in my household because we're a big Nintendo we're big supporters of Nintendo at our house, and this was actually the first film that my son, who's 3, has ever seen in a theater. And so that was a big, and he sat through all of it. He did very hilariously after the previews said, "Is the movie over?" And then we were like, "Oh no! Like this is not like watching YouTube Kids at home where it's like it's a 2-minute video." So that was, I was worried when he said that. I'm like, "Oh, we're in for a long haul." But he actually, the both kids enjoyed it. We are getting requests to hear Jack Black all the time now, and because you haven't seen it, but there's one song in particular that he sings that is very catchy and hilarious, and so yeah, they're requesting that I play that all the time in the car now, which is great.
That's great. And in his defense, in your son's defense, it can be like 40 minutes of trailers, and it can feel like you've had an entire viewing experience. So that was your son's first movie in a theater. What was yours? Do you remember?
Oh, The Little Mermaid, and that started a massive, long love affair with Disney animated films, and I'm not at all excited about the live action Little Mermaid.
Now we can talk about another Little Mermaid.
Yeah,
got some Oscar buzz, for the record.
Wait, really? I guess this is a good segue.
Yes. Well, because Lin-Manuel Miranda is writing new songs for it, and he's on the cusp of an EGOT still. So
I don't think I knew that.
That's
okay. That makes me. Well, he is really like Disney owes him a lot at this point. Yeah. he's done good work for them, so that kind of makes sense. Okay, that makes me more excited about it. I just haven't really been a fan of any of the live action remakes of Disney movies. That for that reason alone, like as much as I think, is it Halle Berry?
Yes,
is her name? Okay,
I think that's right.
I almost said Halle Berry, and
I always think Halle Berry as well.
Yeah, her voice sounds beautiful. Like she sounds like she's gonna nail it in terms of musically, but like in terms of the film, I'm probably gonna be like, why are we remaking one of the best animated movies of all time? Like, so I'll probably be grumpy no matter what. But Lin-Manuel Miranda songs, that's gonna get me in the seats probably. Okay,
and that's another movie where there's the worst people on the internet are mad at it for reasons that are dumb, and they shouldn't do that. But like that is not a reason to not like it. But I'm against the whole sort of process. It just feels like people think that kids can't handle or don't like traditional 2D hand-drawn animation, and they're like, so we're just going to run it back. But I mean, they're also doing a live action Moana, so that, you know, they're going to just do,
Yeah,
they're just going to
it's
do
not going to
whatever.
stop me being grumpy about it is not going to change anything.
Right. They haven't responded to your letters yet, unfortunately.
All right. So that has so you're thinking music has, but there aren't any other categories? I guess visual effects, if those are really good, maybe.
I mean, they don't
But I
look
can't
very
imagine they
good.
would be. Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
Jungle Book ended up nominated, I think.
but I feel like the Jungle Book trailers were like, wow, like this is amazing. I think that, you know, this is to speak, you know, in general, we're in an interesting sort of zone where, you know, we're looking down the barrel. Another piece of movie news is there's potentially going to be a writer's strike starting next month. That's been voted on, and you know, that's in the past. There's been that sort of window of time when movies come out that were finished during a writer's strike, and so they never really got rewritten enough. I always think of Quantum of Solace, the Bond movie, as suffering from that, where they're like, we've got all these set pieces, and we sort of have an idea of what the story is. Anyway, here's the movie, and that's what they then presented. Or Breaking Bad only having 7 episodes in the first season because they couldn't write anymore. So you know, we're in that zone, and we're also coming out of the, you know, very heavily restricted COVID protocol filming, which I do think has had some effect. Maybe this is more on TV than in movies, but there is sort of that feeling sometimes of like, there's only 4 people here in what should be a crowd scene. Or, you know, I'm love Ted Lasso, but it is interesting that like there's all these shots where it's like very clearly our main characters in front of a green screen with the stadium crowd behind them, whereas like, you know, a couple of years ago they would have just filmed it with extras in you know, somewhere on a set. So you know, there's that, and I think that similar to those things, there's the visual effects crunch of, you know, what's been happening, you know, as things ramp back up with COVID or post COVID. There's, you know, all these visual effects studios are being pushed to the brink with the, you know, especially through Disney because of the Marvel shows and the Marvel movies and the Star Wars shows and the Star Wars movies. And, you know, there's been all these stories of how like strained the visual effects artists have been. And I do think you can see it in the quality of the work. And so that, you know, the stuff from Jungle Book, the stuff from that Lion King, you know, remake as well, where it was so high quality, even if it was like, why are we doing this? But it looked so high quality that it could get nominations. Is I don't know if Little Mermaid has that. Everything just looks murky. The animals look just kind of like propped up animals. I don't know. It doesn't look exciting. I would hope that there are going to be you know, movies that will you know, surpass that come out during the course of the year. That said, maybe it ends up looking amazing and it does get some chatter. But I think it's only the you know, song consideration at this point.
Sure. All right, so I think we're ready to move into our Oscar buzz projections for the year. Have you heard any murmurs from either other podcasts you're listening to or articles that you're reading about sort of what hopes critics are pinning on these different movies that haven't come out yet?
There's a few big kind of heavyweights that have been lingering for a while that were maybe rumored to come out even last year. I did. We'll see when the time, if there is a time to discuss it. I went back and looked at some of the predictions. I think it was from Variety from March 2022 for what the 2023 Oscars that we just had would look like. And there's a bunch of the movies that we're going to talk about today that are on there, and I think the one that sort of is looming the largest is, and I have to look at it to make sure I always get it right, Killers of the Flower Moon, which is the Martin Scorsese movie. I never remember if it's killers or killing, and if it's like of or at. My prepositions and my verbiage, I lose that because I haven't read the book, and because I want to see this movie fresh, I'm trying to not read anything about it or look at it. But you know, that's the, you know, I don't want to curse it by saying this, but that's the Fablemans of this year. The old master who is, the rumors, the discussions are like, this is the late period classic, that could be in line with his best work, that could be on a march towards sweeping up a bunch of awards.
And my question was, I think you kind of answered it already, but are people just going nuts about this because of Scorsese?
Everyone involved who has talked about it, and everyone involved includes, it's Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro, the two sort of main Scorsese actor, I don't want to say muses, but collaborators, and Jesse Plemons as I think sort of the main role. And oh no, I should have had this open. Emily Gladstone, is that
Lily Gladstone?
Lily Gladstone, excuse me. They have all sort of been interviewed, and they were like, "Oh, this is the best script that I've ever read, and this is the best movie I've ever been a part of." And maybe that's hyperbole, maybe not. But there's been a lot of talk that like this is actually really good, and that it was filmed and finished at least 2 years ago. Oh no, sorry, finished filming 2 years ago, and they've been working on it and crafting it. And the speculation seemed to be that like this is so good we don't want to rush it out at the end of 2022. Right, so let's get into festivals. Let's do the full low. It's the opposite of being dumped. It's being sort of pedestaled into let's move forward. Which all of this could mean it's just going to get all this hype, and everyone's going to be sick of it before we even see it in America. And it feels like old hat, but it just feels like that's the elephant in the room right now.
Or you could be describing the trajectory that Top Gun Maverick went on, which worked out really well. Because I feel like that was another movie that they held back and delayed a bunch of times because I think they knew what they had. So, maybe that'd be true. Are you okay? I know you said you want to go in fresh. Are you okay if I read the synopsis?
Yes.
From Wikipedia?
Yeah.
It's members of the Osage tribe in northeastern Oklahoma are murdered under mysterious circumstances in the 1920s, sparking a major FBI investigation directed by 29-year-old J. Edgar Hoover's in this. Okay, I now understand why this is a big deal. And former Texas Ranger Tom White. Honestly, reading this synopsis, I would be into this movie even if it weren't a Martin Scorsese movie. Just like the premise alone, I'm a sucker for crime dramas. So that alone, plus the cast, plus Martin Scorsese, I think is what's giving this a lot of heat.
I agree, and people have said, and again, I have not done my homework. I did not understand the assignment, but people who've read the book are like, this is one of the best nonfiction books to come out in the last 20 years. And yeah, everything about this movie is just the Vince McMahon meme of excessively getting more and more interested. I'm interested. I'm very interested. I'm excited. I'm losing my mind. Where it's just sort of like the story seems great. The book's supposed to be incredible. It's Martin Scorsese. It's all of Scorsese's like late period collaborators or career collaborators behind the scenes. The cast. And and then the discussion of it. There was the news, to the degree that it's news. It's premiering at Cannes, I believe, out of competition, but it is premiering at Cannes, and they finally settled on an edit, and it's 3.5 hours, which is long, except that the rumor for a while was it's going to be over 4 hours. It's going to be longer than Gone with the Wind, was the like speculation, like as of a couple weeks ago. So this idea of it's this long sprawling thing that like you gotta experience all of it, and it's going to be incredible, blah blah.
And I feel like half the critics I follow have keeled over at this news, and the other half are like, let's go.
Yes. There's definitely the divide. Like I am very on board with the sort of movement to, can we make movies that are like 90 minutes again? Just because I think how often I choose a movie to watch at home, if it's under 100 minutes, I'm like, great, let's do it. But for all the reasons described, Vince McMahon, I'm going to go to another meme. I'm the guy from the Onion cartoon, the sickos in the window, like, haha, yes. At the 3.5 hours. I will just say the big cloud that sort of hangs over this, and dependent, I guess, on how big how big it may be or what people think about it, is that it is a story about native murders on Native American land and murders of Native Americans, told by a whole lot of white people. So I think there's going to be some degree of folks who are like, what are we doing? Like, what's happening? And why are the main characters of this like the white folk who are coming in to deal with it? And I think that is a fair critique. I think there's also the sort of I don't want it's maybe like an annex of film Twitter. I don't want to just call it that it's Marvel Twitter, but there are other people who are younger who are like, Martin Scorsese ain't anything. He talked Marvel.
Great, he's the guy who throws shade at Marvel movies that I love. Right. Yeah,
So all he does is write movies about how great murder is and how great gangsters are, and there are no women in his movies, and blah blah blah. There's no diversity, and so that like sensation, which there's critiques in there. I think there's some simplified take of Scorsese's film work. That said, I have no problem with anyone being like, yeah, not a lot of me in these movies. So I think that could be the discourse that is around as this movie sort of comes out and people start to see it or even just start to hear about it. I predict like that first trailer, when there's actually a trailer for it, that's going to be out there. And that just might be exhausting enough that by the time it's actually award season, everyone's like, oh my God, like enough Flower Moon. We're done.
I have to go back to your earlier point. I have read a bunch of reports about how they have hired a lot of indigenous consultants for the script and working on the production. So at the very least, they're aware that this discourse is going to happen and that they're trying to get ahead of it. I feel like, again, how genuine that is another issue, but maybe that gives me a little bit of hope. But yeah. So if this pans out, then, if we're thinking about our five directors lineup in Best Director, he's got to be in there.
Right.
Who else do we see in there potentially? I feel like Bradley Cooper's got a shot. There's a lot of buzz around like, oh, is he going to make a comeback because he got snubbed?
Mm-hmm. Is Maestro his coronation?
Right. Like, is he finally going to make it? Because he did not get nominated for A Star Is Born.
Right. He got nominated as an actor, but not as the director.
Not as a director. And I remember that people being up in arms about that.
So, that seems like a discussion. I'm probably jumping the gun a little bit because this is sort of lurking as a dark horse. But I do think the other big Apple Studios movie that's out there is Napoleon, which is Ridley Scott. And Ridley Scott is, this is a weird thing to say, quietly very old, but he's in his 80s, but has been just like churning out movies. I'm still over here in a pretty low populated corner, standing The Last Duel as a movie that should have gotten a lot of attention when it came out. All attention paid to House of Gucci should have gone to The Last Duel instead. But he's never won, and he's never gotten. That may be wrong. He might have won for Gladiator. I could be totally wrong on that. So I can already see Jen's going to fact check me, and I appreciate it.
I'm Googling it as we speak. Keep continue.
But okay, even if he has one, in the same way that Scorsese won for The Departed, but everyone's like, he should have two. Like, there could be that Ridley Scott, like, what are we doing? Like, if Napoleon turns out great, especially even though it's not related to it, there's this like lingering idea of there was the great lost Kubrick movie of Napoleon that he could never get to. He never like pulled together, never finished. So, if this is actually really good, big historical costume drama, I've heard it's centered mostly around the love story at the middle, and Joaquin Phoenix is playing Napoleon, who obviously is an Academy favorite. So, I think that there's there may be some traction for let's give Ridley Scott his due for the first or second time. Jen, is it first or second?
So he has never won for Best Director.
Crazy. Oh, right. Because
actually, he has not won any Oscars. So he has been nominated 3 times for Best Director: Thelma and Louise, Gladiator, and Black Hawk Down. And then he was got nominated for The Martian for Best Picture in 2016, and that was his last nomination. So, which seems crazy. have we messed this up?
Was that the year that Soderbergh won against himself? It was. Okay, that's why. It was Traffic and Aaron Brockovich, and Soderbergh got nominated twice, and he
Oh,
won for Traffic. I don't know why I thought that was the next year. But yeah, so that's there's a narrative, and
there's a
again,
narrative. Yep.
it's tough, and we have seen in recent years that it doesn't always work. And Ridley Scott, it can be pretty curmudgeonly about things. So I can see him, even if he's trying to be on his best behavior,
Didn't he have a
stepping in
rant
some
about
things.
teenagers watching movies on their phones? Isn't that
He's
him?
done that. He did do a movie about Egypt with all white European and American actors, and he's like, well, you can't cast anyone from Egypt, like no one will pay to see them. And it was like, but Ridley, like that's your job, is to make them want to go and see. He's like, well, like we got to use white people because that's the only people. And he was like, I don't like it, but that's the way it is. And there's certainly a mindset there. That is, I think, how a lot of studios think. But there's this is going to be the first, or I guess the second, if we include the Osage component, that like the discourse could undermine any of these things.
Sure. Though Napoleon and Maestro both seem equally like Oscar bait, traditional Oscar bait,
Mm-hmm.
because it's about real events, or in the case of Maestro, because Maestro's a biopic about Leonard Bernstein, right?
That's correct, I believe.
Yeah. So I feel like that checks a lot of Oscar boxes.
They do like biopics, and they do
It's a
like
musical biopic.
musicians. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you? What are you thinking, either in terms of a movie that you have heard or seen is looming in general,
So
director?
yeah. So what's interesting is, I don't know how much this would be in the director category, but I would say in terms of universal and consistent buzz from pundits and critics, you're right. Killers of the Flower Moon is definitely at the top of the list. The next one for me, at least, in sort of the listening that I've been doing, is for Past Lives, which came out of Sundance. So that's Celine Song, who I believe this is her directorial debut, and but she's a playwright, and so she's kind of like making the transition from playwriting to filmmaking. And it was, and one of those things where this was the first year that Sundance went back in person, and so but they still kept their virtual festival. But Past Lives was one of the films that was only available to see at in-person screenings. And I remember everyone who could not physically go to the festival having serious FOMO and being like, oh, like the best movie out of the festival was one that I couldn't go see. But the buzz coming out of that was phenomenal. Like, people were just like, this is an amazing movie. It's going, like, just you wait. If they can handle the campaign correctly, it's gonna be a big contender come Oscar season. And so the description, at least, or like the appeal that it would have, feels a lot like Drive My Car to me, because and that's not just because it's about Asian people. In case, if you know what both of those films are about, and you're like, why are you doing that, Jen? But it is like, it's a story about an Asian American immigrant who's in a love triangle in the two countries of her like the country of her origin and then the country of her immigration.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like this. My understanding is it's like a story told over a lifetime that sort of talks about these different, like, addresses these different relationships, and then in the process addresses the immigrant experience. And it also seems like a very lyrical and kind of slow movie. That's why I was going for Drive My Car, the idea that it's like lyrical, slow, poignant, beautiful. People are saying immaculately written. So that's in terms of the Oscars puzzle, that, like, I was like, oh, maybe that could have like some Drive My Car-esque momentum in that way, where it's like a largely word of mouth from kind of coming out of nowhere contender.
I mean, I would say it might even have more than Drive My Car momentum, just because the discussion of this movie, I feel like everyone who saw it was like, it's incredible, and it's like as incredible as everyone is saying it is, it's more incredible than that. Like you cannot like feel like you're going to be overhyped about it, because that's how good it is. So yeah, I mean, it's. I feel like people have penciled in the two leads as nominees, and director and picture, and potentially I think it's original screenplay.
Hmm.
That's yeah. I don't think it's based on one of Song's plays or anything. The one thing I have to add is when Jen drafted the list, she was like, "Oh, unknown release date. It's coming out in June. They put a date out. It's June 2nd now.
Oh, that's great.
So that means it's not far away that it can be seen by at least some people. So I think that that also to me sort of feels like releasing a movie like this in the middle of the summer sounds like they think like, no, this can really have something, even if it's not going to be
Who's the
maybe a
distributor?
blockbuster.
Do you know?
It's A24.
Oh, even
So
better.
come on.
Okay,
I mean,
we can do this.
this feels weird to say, to compare it as like again the sort of pie in the sky potential, but like it's supposed to have very like it does have like the sort of Drive My Car vibes, but in terms of the way people talk about it, I mean, Everything Everywhere All at Once was another movie where everyone's like, this is great, like, but like, no, it's great, like we all really like it, and like we're excited for people to see it, and it came out and people were like, yeah, we like this. And I know there are people out there who probably didn't like it, but whatever. And I think the idea of the kind of story it is telling, it is this sort of love triangle, prolonged a study of a life. I Yeah, it's over a long stretch of time. I think that it's like three. I think if I heard correctly and I'm remembering correctly, it's three segments, each one separated by like 7 or 10 years over the course of these people's lives. And just that it's incredibly moving. The like all the things that Jen said, writing's impeccable, performances are amazing, and they're putting it out in the middle of the summer, thinking it's going to. If that to me feels like they think it's going to have
Yeah.
something.
And you had actually originally asked me about director, and I initially was not sure because it's a directorial debut. But honestly, I feel like the Daniels have blown that door wide open. Like, Everything
Mm,
Everywhere All at Once was not their first directing gig by any means, but they are really new to the scene, and therefore at the beginning of the season no one really took them seriously as best director contenders, and then they ended up winning. So yeah, that I feel like that alone has now set a different precedent in terms of what we can expect in the best
right.
director category. Are there other best picture nominees that you feel like people have been talking about?
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, I think that there's some degree of expectation that Oppenheimer is going to have a strong play. It's the new Christopher Nolan movie. He I feel like there's a feeling that like, oh, he's under rewarded. He's never gotten an Oscar, but tends to clean up below the line, and has gotten a good amount of Best Picture nominations for his movies. So and it's it's historical. It's World War II. It's doesn't seem like it's any kind of intense, weird, time-based story structure, like a lot of his original movies have been. So this could be the chance that like it connects with it's a little bit more accessible to a wider audience, including maybe traditional Oscar voters. Incredibly stacked cast, so I think that has some real potential. Yeah, I feel like we sort of keep pulling. I've got a bunch of sort of like, oh, the like old guard or people who have been around a long time. But I'll pivot to the musical version of The Color Purple, which is coming out Christmas Day. That's slated for sort of the Christmas release, and it's was a I believe a big hit on Broadway. I think it won a bunch of Tonys. I am saying that having not looked that up at all, but just sort of having a vague memory that it was successful, and that people have been very excited about this for a long time. And I'm worried about my pronunciation of the director's name, but it's Blitz Bazawuli, I believe, with again some it was a strong buzz around some of the performers, Fantasia Barrino and Coleman Domingo, who there's been talk about them sort of having having a lot of momentum, that would is sort of it's nothing's written in pen, but the pencil was pressed down real hard when they put The Color Purple as one of the potential nominees.
Sure, and I feel like I've heard a lot of buzz about the musical artist Her, like Her,
Mm.
because this is, I believe, her first acting or on screen role. Like she won an Oscar for the song, the Daniel Kaluuya, Keith Stanfield movie.
Oh,
That
Judas and the Black
Judas and the
Messiah.
Black Messiah. Yes, I believe she won for original song,
I think that's correct.
but this is her first on screen role. So people are excited about
Confirming,
that.
yeah, Fight for You, Judas and the Black Messiah. She
Thank
did
you.
win an Oscar for that. Yes, and also Taraji B. Henson is another supporting actor in that that's supposed to have a lot of buzz. So, yeah, that's supposed to be great. Potentially another way for Steven Spielberg to get another Oscar. He was one of the producers on the movie because
All right.
he
Yeah, I
he
think
did
I
the
saw
original.
that. And Oprah, who was
Yep.
in the original cast.
Yes, she was in the original movie. That was her. I think that was her acting debut.
I guess for some reason I didn't remember. Oh, but for the film, not for the musical. I'm
Correct.
assuming. That's what I
Yes.
meant. Yeah.
The
Okay.
original
I'm
80,
just clarifying that for
85.
everyone because we're talking about the Broadway musical, and then I brought up Oprah, and I mean, she was in the original film adaptation of The Color Purple.
Yeah. What other ones have you heard about?
I mean, people are kind of confused now about Barbie after the trailer. I feel like people were like, Greta Gerwig doing a Barbie movie, yes, like this has to be an Oscar contender, right? Because and part of that is because of Little Women, right? She did really well at the Oscars with that film, and just because she is such a recognized talent at this point, both in terms of writing and directing now. And so I feel like people were like, yes, just on face value, just the on paper, this film seems like it would be a shoe-in for Oscar contender. But then the trailer came out and it just seems like a funny movie about Barbie. And so like now people are like, huh? And Greg and I had talked about this in at the top of our air review, because we were like, oh, I guess this movie is just a comedy now, which is still good, but like maybe it wasn't the sort of like think piece about Barbie that maybe we thought it would be, but it still could be. That's the thing, is like a bunch of critics I've listened to, some of them are like, oh, I guess it's not an Oscar contender now that we know what it is, and others are like, no, just because the trailer's sort of showing this, I feel like because it's Greta Gerwig, it's going to have something up its sleeve, and it's not going to be what it seems entirely, and so people are still holding out for it to be sort of the more interesting version of a Barbie movie.
Right. Yeah, I find it difficult to believe that Greta Gerwig would direct and co-write with Noah Baumbach a pretty boring straight ahead comedy about set in the Barbie world.
Right.
So I think that pedigree does make it feel like there's it seems like there could be more there. Maybe the dream of Barbie Best Picture nominee, or Gerwig for Best Director. Maybe that's not going to work out, but I could still even if it comes out and it's just like very funny, and is just like a really funny movie, I could still see it getting a adapted screenplay nomination just for those two people, based on sort of names alone. And even if it's kind of bad, I think that it could get production design and costuming.
That's what I was gonna say. Is like a lot of the crafts categories, even like you said, if it's just a face value comedy, but it's well done, or even if it's like a like kind of weird comedy, right? Then I think because it just looks amazing. Like that's the thing I took away from the trailer, is that like this really is going to pull us into another world that is Barbie's world. So yeah, I think
Would
like
you also say she's a Barbie girl?
I thought that, but I wasn't going to go there. Thank you for following through on that. I wonder if that song will make an appearance, ironically, in the movie.
I feel like it has to.
That would be great, right?
Yeah.
Only if it's ironic.
Yes.
If it's sincere, then I don't know.
I was gonna say we need the slow like piano cover of Barbie Girl in the last trailer for it.
The BioShock version.
Exactly. Yes. The desolate dirge Barbie Girl.
Nice. I love it. We haven't talked about Denis Villeneuve.
We have. I mean, I feel like we're both thinking about the draft, so we're like, we don't want to bring it up.
I was like, I'm like, do I bring this? Was something I hadn't anticipated when we decided to do a draft at the end of this, where I'm like, wait, am I giving away my strategy by gushing about certain movies? I mean,
but We know. We
We
already
I
know.
think we both know.
Right. Dune, 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 Dune. It's just like drums, the drums in the distance. Dune, Dune,
So, I
Dune.
mean, how are you feeling about this? Do you feel like this is going to be the Return of the King effect that people were banking on when Denis Villeneuve did not get nominated for Best Director, and that it didn't really like? I mean, it cleaned up in the in craft categories, but
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a contender for Best Picture at all, like a real one at least. So, yeah, what are you feeling? Could this be the Dune Strikes Back?
It could be, the issue with that is that the book fans are, all pretty adamant of like, but you got to make it a trilogy and do Dune Messiah, the second book, the second much shorter book, as the third movie. That's a clean, and I mean, obviously, just the original book is also pretty clean, but if we have all this, let's do Dune Messiah. So I'm assuming what they're going to do is not announce that they're going to do Dune Messiah. If there is some momentum, they're going to wait. If the movie comes out, people like it, it gets some momentum, they'll hold off to be like, it's Return of the King and not the Two Towers. But I do wonder if that's going to potentially hang over it. But the second half of Dune in book form rules, and has a bunch of stuff that's like even more like enjoyable, and I think answers a lot of the questions and
Mm,
critiques that existed around the first movie. So I think it's possible that this could just be blowing people away and be the big, I feel like this could be the in a way sort of what Top Gun Maverick was, what people thought Avatar Way of Water would be, of the sort of like, do we just give it to Dune? Like, is this is this what we do? Like, maybe we do. But I say all of that and also like know that Dune is still ultimately very weird, and probably too weird to be a huge a huge blockbuster. And I don't know if Denny makes movies that are he might be a little too have too much sort of cold distance, which I love. But it's possible it won't catch on to that degree. But yeah, I think that it's would not surprise me if nomination day, it's the movie with the most nominations is Dune Part Two, and
right.
it cleans up. Well, I should say cleans up, but it gets 2 to 5 craft categories, and maybe that's it. But it's got the potential to do more. And
Right. Yeah.
between Arrival and Dune, he's overdue. Like, people are like, he needs something. So there's definitely that narrative too of, he's not career, but like, he needs a mid career blessing from the
Yeah, I
Academy.
feel like at the very least he gets the "Sorry we snubbed you last year or last time" director nomination. That I feel like is a, even if Dune Part 2 is not very good, I feel like that might happen. But it's going to be good. I'm manifesting that.
Yeah, it has to be. And to similarly manifest, and because you took the um, you took the bullet. I was trying to think if there's a term for bullets in the Dune world, but I can't think of like the weapons. You took the Cairo knife. What is it called? The sort of the special knife.
Oh yeah, yes.
By bringing up Dune, I will be the person to bring up How Do You Live, which is the new and potentially probably final Miyazaki movie, that
This is
he's
embarrassing that I'm not the one who's bringing those up, but go ahead.
well, but
I'm
that's
glad
what I'm
you
saying.
are.
You jumped. You were willing to be the one to bring up Dune. Let me bring this one up so you don't have to bring up all the ones we might be jostling for later. It's a Miyazaki movie. What do you want from me? It's that's it. Like, it should be in the conversation. I feel like as time has gone by, as Japanese animation, and Miyazaki's work in particular has only gained more and more credibility and respect. There is a feeling of he's been underserved in terms of the Academy Awards. I think he's only won once. I think Princess Mononoke won. Is that right? For
I feel like it was Spirited Away, but
it might be
maybe
Spirited Away. Maybe people thought it should be Princess Mononoke. Um, but that movie might have came out before there was the animated movie, which could be the issue. Um, but anyway, that like he's only won he's only been recognized once. This he's retired multiple times, but this time it's been 10 years since he made a movie, and all the discussion of it is basically him being like, I do not want to make a movie, but I had to. Like this movie, I just felt like I had to. And again, he's an elder statesman. He's in his 80s. It feels like if this is I don't want to say standard because that's obviously very unfair, but if this is a sort of regular quality Miyazaki movie, there will be some momentum of like, let's get it into Best Picture. Like let's expand out into beyond just it being an animated movie.
Right.
And that's hard to do. That hasn't really happened
But
in recent years.
If Guillermo del Toro keeps pushing with his animation to cinema campaign, I feel like we can make it happen.
Yeah. And again, I think that there's something of like the people who might be like, I don't know, Guillermo del Toro, like he's already won for like quote unquote real movies. The like, oh, here's like the master of animation, who's still with us. Let's make sure he gets rewarded while he's still here. And that's if the movie is at his usual standards. If it is actually like even better than that, then it could really pick up momentum.
So it was Spirited Away that won an Oscar in 2001. But Howl's Moving Castle and The Wind Rises were also nominated
and didn't win.
Mm-hmm.
I know The Wind Rises, that lost to Frozen, right? I feel like people get mad about that.
That sounds right. I mean, Best Animated Feature has been so dominated by Disney and Pixar that yes, like you can probably, if they're likely any of the years that a Miyazaki movie would have been going up, there likely would have been a Disney or Pixar movie going against it.
Right. Well, thank you for checking me. I hope the listeners appreciate how confident I sound when I say things that I don't know, and are just not true. I'm just like, wow, Ridley Scott won for Gladiator.
You're just being you're trying to manifest it.
Yes, trying to make it happen, trying to change history. Yeah. So, all right. Look, since we're here, we're talking about animated movies already. Side note, low key, will the Best Animated Feature be the most competitive category this year? It's possible because one of the other movies that seems certain to be nominated there, and also could break into Best Picture is Across the Spider-Verse, the sequel to, arguably one of, if not the best movies of the past decade.
I would agree.
Which
I stand by that.
Yeah, I don't know what else. I don't know what to say about it, besides it looks incredible. The first movie was damn near perfect, and I'm excited to see what they do with it. In a way, sort of, I guess the expectations are really, really high, but I haven't heard any like discussion of like, oh, maybe it's not going to be good, or they might have lost it or whatever. It just seems that like everyone is giddily anticipating this movie coming out, and it would be there would be something very amusing in the world of people being like, when are superhero movies going to get recognized? If they the big push actually, and I know Black Panther got the nominations, but if if the next one to do that is the animated one, Across the Spider-Verse.
What are the other potential nominees for animated feature? Because I agree that just by virtue of having those two, How Do You Live and Across the Spider-Verse, it's already a heavyweight category.
Yeah.
I think there's a sorry, I asked you a question and then I was trying to answer it myself. No,
that's okay. Well, there is a Pixar movie called Elemental, and there's been a lot of talk on the internet about like, oh, what are you gonna do on I can't remember the actual date now, in July, when it's Barbie and Oppenheimer on the same day. I think we got to talk about June 16th in the same way, because there's The Flash. For better or for worse, The Flash is coming out, and people are excited about that. Elemental, which is the new Pixar movie, and a third movie that will be coming back around to, the new Wes Anderson movie, Atomic City, is coming out that day. Sorry, Asteroid City. Again, very confident that I know what I'm doing. But Elemental is a Pixar movie that people are pretty excited about. It's like it to me, it feels just sort of like, oh, you're doing Inside Out, but with earth, water, wind, and fire. But it's still Pixar, and they know what they're doing.
And I feel like I've heard more people compare it to Soul
Oh, right, that's good.
than Inside Out, which is interesting because I totally agree with you that just based on the premise alone, it sounds much closer to Inside Out. But maybe there's something that I'm missing in terms of what they see in the film. Maybe it's the talent that's involved, or
Yeah.
or something like that. But
and then there's a sort of straight up Disney animated studios movie called Wish that is coming out in November. I will be honest, I don't know what that is about, but it's the Thanksgiving weekend Disney movie that like they think is good enough to be released then. So I'm assuming that that's going to
so
have some juice behind it.
I do know what this is about, and I really am really curious to see your reaction to this. So the premise of this movie is it is the origin story of the wishing star
Mm-hmm.
as seen in multiple classic Disney animated films. So the idea is like I think it's there. I don't know if it's trying to do a multiverse sort of situation, but it's sort of like here's the star that so many other classic Disney characters have wished upon. It's literally when you wish upon a star, that star, you know what I mean, like that star. And so it's like talking about basically the first Disney character that we haven't met yet.
Well, I mean, finally, we've all been waiting. We've all been like, what's the story behind that star?
Right. It's the movie no one asked for.
I mean,
but we're getting. But it's starring Ariana DeBose. So I feel like that I was like, oh, like she's gonna be the lead.
She's doing the thing.
She's doing. Oh, she's never gonna live that down. That's terrible.
Probably not.
So,
and I cannot mock this as someone who thoroughly enjoys and frequently rewatches the movie they made about the first paragraph and a half of the crawl of the original Star Wars movie, where it's just like, yeah, the rebel spies. Like, I want to see what happens. How do the spies do it? So okay. Good luck. Good luck to the star. I hope the star does well. And that's a good movie. So that's 4, and I feel like I would feel pretty good thinking, unless Wish or Elemental, more likely Wish, is terrible, then those 4 feel pretty good. And then we've got the aforementioned Super Mario Brothers. If it's made $1 billion+ around the world, like people be like, oh, what the hell, like Mario Brothers, let's do it. There is the Spider-Verse inspired Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie that's coming out that Seth Rogen is producing, that looks like it could be really fun. They got actual teenagers to voice the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh,
and that looks like, the trailer for that looks like it could be really fun. And if that takes off and people really like that, then that could be something. And then there's a movie, I forget what studio it's from, and I don't really know much about it. It's called Migration, and it's about like birds, when birds are the characters, but it's written by Mike White. And I feel like, Mike White's got a lot of juice with White Lotus and the other things that he's written. So, that's possible. And then, as always, there are movies that I've probably not heard of. That's like, what's the studio in Ireland that does like, Wolfwalkers? Like, what are they doing? They may have a movie, or like, some other, studio from out there in the world.
Netflix usually has a contender, like a Netflix original animated, but I haven't heard anything about what their animation slate is.
Yes, now I'm wondering, wait, did I pull Migration up? No, Migration is Universal and Illumination. I don't know if Netflix has a set movie yet.
Right. But they might, because they usually do. So their animation division is pretty strong.
But yeah, I think between those 2 big contenders, plus you've got a Pixar movie that again, if it is a soul, I mean, I love Inside Out, don't get me wrong, but if it's less a sort of like a copy of that and more like, what if we kind of mix Inside Out and Soul, like that would be a runaway favorite in almost any year, except that there's these other 2 movies. So yeah, that could be a real crazy category.
Love it. Are other categories that you feel like have a lot of early Oscar buzz around them that we haven't talked about yet? And then I think we should move it to
Okay. I mean, I hate to say that the biggest lists I did were like, what are the kinds of movies that are coming out, which are not related to awards at all, but just how many movies there are about products, like just sort of items that exist, and then like there's a lot of sports movies that are around. So I don't necessarily have an answer to the question that you have. I will say my general thinking when I'm kind of looking at these movies tends to kind of lean in the writing area of like, oh, this could be a screenplay because like this looks like this could be really well written, and so that will be my transition to talk about Next Goal Wins, which is the next
That's
upcoming
Taika
Taika
Waititi, right?
Waititi movie, which I don't know if it has any buzz based on any performance, any footage of it beyond just sort of like, oh, it's Taika and he's not doing a Thor movie, and it's it feels sort of like an inspiring, heartwarming a sports story that feels like it could really fit into the it's almost sort of the Ted Lasso shaped hole in our movie world, and also like be a way for like we could get Taika's like jokey approach, but also like some of the serious things without necessarily having to be like Nazis, like Jojo Rabbit was like, the stakes are high in a sports sense, but maybe not like that high. So that may the chances of it might be obviously based on how it turns out, and also there is some Taika fatigue that is out there. But I sort of had that in a conversation around uh, a potential screenplay area.
And that's starring, because that was sort of on my radar as well, but more because Michael Fassbender's back. He's come back to acting
Yeah,
now, which
he's
is
in.
amazing.
He's got a couple. He's got a couple things cooking because he's also in
He,
the new Fincher movie.
yes, that's the other one. So I remember when I was sort of looking at our master list and going through all the movies that are supposed to be coming out, I was like, Michael Fassbender is in not one but two movies that I would be excited to see. How is this happening? I thought he retired from acting and went into like race car driving. Am I getting that right? I
Yeah,
don't know.
he did get into race car driving. He also, I hate to be this prop. I'm like, there's there's the Onion headline that's the like, man enjoys being the one to bring up that John Lennon was abusive to women. I kind of feel like I'm always like, what about? There's also the fact that Michael Fassbender was accused of being abusive to his girlfriends, and he was, and then he's like, I'm gonna go into race car driving. It's like, okay, Michael. So let's hope he's done an inward journey and really found some ways to grow and heal and atone for his sins. He is a really good actor, so it is going to be fun to see him in movies, even though people who do bad things should not be rewarded for their bad behavior.
Absolutely. Yeah, and yet all I could see on the Wikipedia page or wherever I was looking at this was like, oh, there's a David Fincher movie where it's Michael Fassbender and Tilda Swinton. Sign me up.
Yes. Yeah, and then right, another one that's him and Will Arnett, Elizabeth Moss, Reese Darby, and a bunch of other people in a Taika Waititi movie. Sounds good. Sounds like it'll be a good time. Speaking of bad things that people are accused of, maybe we should mention that there was heavy buzz until a few weeks ago for one actor in both lead and supporting actor for two different movies, and that's Jonathan Majors, who seemed to have a slot locked up for Magazine Dreams, which was a Sundance movie, and also potentially for Creed 3. People were like, Creed 3 was very successful. Could that be the movie from this year that has sort of long-standing momentum and gets more than you expected when it comes nomination time? But he has also been accused of not being a good person to other people in his life, and doesn't seem like there's going to be continued buzz for him.
Right, and that has become much more official recently and we really should have talked about this in the movie news. It's just that I've been repressing this news because I'm just so disappointed and angry that he has now ruined his work, his great work for me, and like that he will no longer be like, I'm like, why did you, we can't have nice things, why did you ruin this with your bad behavior? Anyway, so we really should have brought this up because he has now officially been dropped by Disney or Marvel, right? That they have announced that
Oh,
they're going to recast Kang.
I actually did not
That's
see that. That's
Yeah, I don't
interesting.
know if it's everywhere. I have seen articles that have mentioned that. So it's
Okay.
out there. I don't know if it's like been corroborated or anything like that, or if it's just a
Mm.
rumor. It might still be at the level of rumor, but that's the thing that's probably happening. And then the other thing that which I think is more in the mainstream trade news is that his agency has dropped him. So
Yes.
he's no longer has representation. So if they dropped him, they're not no longer defending him, saying we're going to clear this up, right? Like then you know that this is done. So so
Yeah, there was also some like, there was a sort of the news story about it, and then there was like they released text messages that he had exchanged with his partner who was the victim, and they were like, "See, this seems he's innocent, and there's video that will prove it." And then it was like no one saw any video, and then suddenly all these people were like, "I don't work with him anymore." And it's like, oh no,
yeah,
this is I understand the sort of like, well, we don't want to rush to judgment on things, but it's not a rush anymore. It doesn't feel like that it's, if nothing else, it's like, well, maybe this just needs to be, we need to pause. We need to pause on this person being a public figure
right.
in all of our lives.
Which again is so disappointing because I feel like I had just reached the point where I was like, maybe he's my favorite person in movies right
Yeah.
now, because especially because he did this amazing interview, which I'm not recommending anyone go listen because it will just make you depressed. He did this amazing interview with IndieWire's Screen Talk, the podcast with Eric Cohn and Thompson, two critics that I admire, and they nerd out, like he's a fan of the podcast and he listens to their podcast, and so
Um,
he was like, let's nerd out about the Oscars and let's nerd out about the movie industry, and I was just like, oh, it's great, he's one of us. No, nope.
no.
Done. But so what's interesting is I actually have seen, I don't know if I told you this, I have seen Magazine Dreams.
I mean, you did tell me because we talked about it when Sundance happened, but that was off mic. So I
Right.
will officially act surprised of like, what? You saw Magazine Dreams?
I honestly I couldn't remember who I told. Yeah, so Magazine Dreams, honestly I don't know how they can release that movie now
Yeah.
because of the type of movie that it is. So for those who have no idea what we're talking about, Magazine Dreams is a film about a fictional. It's not based on a real person, as far as I know. It's a bodybuilder who becomes really obsessed with bodybuilding, like to the point where it's like clearly unhealthy, and he just like he has issues with aggression and violence and
Hmm.
it's kind of like Taxi Driver slash Joker. It's like that, but with bodybuilding involved. And so, I mean, he is. It's again so disappointing because he's absolutely incredible. I don't know how, like the movie. I was
Yeah.
sort of like, I don't really know what to do with this, but his performance is electric and disturbing and terrifying. But now it's like there's this added layer of, oh, like he might have been not acting as much. Or like he
Right.
might have been channeling inner rage from his own life, or like at least violent behavior from his own life when doing this film. So I feel like they can't. It's just a press bomb waiting to go off. I don't know how they get around that.
It does. Yeah. I mean, it feels like it's going to end up. I feel like there were one or two filmed and completed, not the famous one, but one or two filmed and completed Kevin Spacey movies that were just like, nope, like it's just not coming out, or it got like dumped onto a disc and sold somewhere for like $5. Um, the other, the only thing I did not get to see Magazine Dreams. It sold out before I bought tickets. This is a good window into Jen being more prepared for things like the online Sundance than me. So I didn't see it, but I remember the discussion was sort of like, basically like he's amazing before all the news came out about him. But like that the movie was not there. Like it's like, and that like the studio that bought it was like, we're gonna work with the director to reshape it, which is interesting and doesn't mean it couldn't end up working. But I think that the fact that it was like they would need to spend money to finish it. It's not like, they already had the finished product that they loved, that like it needed to be edited or some stuff maybe rearranged. So they'd have to pay for that. Plus, like, what, like, this is the thing, is like hanging it around his performance. How do you sell that? It does kind of just feel like it's going to go into a vault or just get dropped onto whatever X plus streaming service that is out there for the studio that owns it, and it will be like, well, good luck to everybody who wants to watch it. And it's all a shame, and obviously mostly a shame for the bad things the crimes that were committed, and the people who are victims of it. But also a shame that like we don't get to enjoy these great performances from this person.
Right. And yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is that he is the movie.
Mm-hmm.
There's basically no scenes that don't have him in it.
Oh my gosh.
So it really, like, I don't know how they get around it. I think they can't release it. And to your point, I can corroborate, like, when I saw it, I was it was very intense, and I was really engrossed in his performance and in the film as this sort of like character study, because again, he is the movie, like it's all about him. And but at the ending threw me, where I was like, oh, there, like, it feels like it has multiple endings, or it doesn't know how to end. And so I was on the bandwagon, because a couple other critics had said this as well, of like, oh, it just needs another edit. Like, it just needs, like, someone needs to edit it, make a new edit, make a new cut, and then it will be potentially good to go. Like, if we can get the movie right, then he's in for best actor. And so obviously that narrative is gone now. but yeah, so I totally agree with you that it would require too much effort now to try to salvage it. So but even still, I feel like I don't know how you release that movie without having to directly engage with what happened and the discourse around it, and just open up that can of worms. Yeah, so
it's tough. Well, to complete the cycle of movie discussion, preview discussion around people accused of bad behavior. Another movie that I probably would be really looking forward to is The Holdovers from Alexander Payne. Alexander Payne has been accused of not doing good things when back in the day by Rose McGowan. So that's not ideal, but it is a reunion of him and Paul Giamatti, his star from Sideways, and this is obviously not as this is terrible that like this is the way to discuss it, but it's like this isn't in the news. It's not as prominent. As Jonathan Majors, like Jonathan Majors is out. Alexander Payne probably going to be okay in terms of like they'll accept him. So that's certainly in the conversation for actor, director, and again, if it's good, like it could go beyond that. So that's another movie to mention, and good to mention in the context of like maybe shady guys and maybe people that are not great.
On that note, should we do a draft?
We should. I'm looking at my sort of longish list, and I feel bad that I got things on here we haven't even talked about. So it's like I didn't mean to like spring a surprise, but we'll see. It's mostly the movies that I don't even know if they're coming out this year, because there's some that are on the border of will they make it to release this year or be held like the Scorsese movie was last year. Will they be held for a future year?
I think we don't have to worry about that too much. If it's in the ether, we could draft it. Right. So do you want to explain for folks like what our process is going to be? And when I say folks, I don't just mean listeners, I mean me.
Yeah. Fair. We'll see. Again, I've made it very clear through this podcast that I don't always know what I'm talking about. But the idea that we had was we were like, we're going to come in with a top 5 each, and then we started talking about it. Realized that it would probably be at least 2 up to 4, maybe even all 5 of the same movies because we have pretty similar tastes. So to instead add a little bit of unnecessary manufactured competitiveness into the idea. We sort of decided to sort of pull from the big picture, and also fantasy sports in general, of like, well, let's draft movies. We've don't have any sort of agreed upon, because this was sort of, we thought about it right before recording, what like any kind of results it could mean, or like how we're going to measure it, or if we're even going to measure it, or if there's really any sort of competition. We're not at the stage yet of trying to like pick anything of like, we know this will do well, but this is mostly just like to make lists of movies we're most excited about. And we'll do a coin flip to see which of us will go first, and then we'll alternate through 10 picks, 5 each, to get a top 5. And then we'll have that, we'll sort of be able to put that aside and come back to it to see, again, it's like, what does winning mean in this context? But like, what movies at the end of it all are we like, which list had the movies that we liked the most at the end? I foresee, my prediction is that it's somehow going to end up that I like Jen's list and more than mine, and vice versa. Just because of the way the world works sometimes. So does that make sense? I mean, Jen,
Yes.
as the person doing it, did I explain it in a way where it made sense to you?
Sorry, the pause was me contemplating, do I make a Harry Potter 100 points for Gryffindor, the last minute joke? And I feel like that's the level of logic we would apply to scoring
Yes.
these drafts.
I reserve the right for us to potentially have like a more structured way of selecting movies as we get closer to, we've actually seen most or all of them, of like, which one do we think is going to do well. But at this point, it's all just like, what do we want to see? What are we looking forward to?
Let's do it.
So I'm going to do use a Google search to do a coin flip. Whoever, Jen, you call it if it lands on the side. I guess what we'll do is you get to choose. This is like overtime in the NFL. Do you want to go first and have the first pick, or do you want to go second for some reason and do that? There's a reason why you would maybe want to do that if we structured it differently, but it's too late and we've talked too long. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. You just get to choose.
Wait, can I just pick heads or tails?
Yes.
Okay, that's what
I mean. But if you win, you get to say that you're going to go
choose
first.
If I'm going. Yeah, I'm going to go first.
Yeah.
Like what?
I don't. Yeah, I know. All right. So I'm going to flip. Are you ready?
Yes.
It's flipping. So call it.
Tails.
It is heads. I can screen share if you want it to be. I will receive the ball, meaning that I'll pick first.
It's honor amongst podcasters. We're good.
I could screen share if you want it. I guess I could have actually like flipped a real coin. I have one somewhere. Wow. I'm taking Killers of the Flower Moon. I want the Scorsese movie. I know what like. Yeah, I feel like the race seemed to be a different movie, but I do have Killers of the Flower Moon first, so I'm going with that.
I'm not gonna lie, this is shocking me right now.
I know. I it was one of those of like, do I the strategy is, do I want to take a movie that I know that you for sure really want, that I also really want, or do I go with the movie that I am currently, after the cram session of prepping this, I am still the most currently excited about, and I'm going to go with the Scorsese.
Sure. No, I'm with you. I mean, this was to be, this was definitely on my list, but it was not my first pick.
I figured it wasn't. Well, that's good.
I'm really okay.
You get to have your first pick.
My first pick is Dune Part 2.
Dune.
And I just, I love Dune Part 1 so much. And it also I have a very memorable, in watching it in the theater experience. We watched it together.
We did
with a fairly large group of friends that I had collected by renting out a theater. So this was, for those of you who don't remember when Dune Part 1 came out, this was one of the first major blockbuster films that came out after, things started working their way, like after the vaccine came out for COVID, and people were once again willing to go to a movie theater for the first time. And so, the theater, think it was, is it AMC? I think it's AMC. The AMC sort of near where I live was doing a deal where you could rent out the whole theater and then just invite all of your friends. And initially, this was a very good deal because then if I got like a regular movie ticket price from everybody, it was mostly at the cost. And so I was like, yeah, this is totally worth it to get all my friends together to go see a movie that I'm really excited to see. And so I just have a distinct memory of seeing the movie in the theater and being really blown away. I feel like you were sitting right behind me, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and in the row behind me. And I think at the end, I turned around and I was like, that was amazing. And you were like, yeah, it was. Anyways, I just, yeah, we didn't really have to say that much, but I remember I feel like it's rare that there's a movie while I'm watching it in the theater that my meta brain kicks in is like, this is a really good movie. Like you're watching a
Mm-hmm.
really good movie right now. I feel like, and that's sort of what happened while I was watching this. Like partway through, I was like, wow, this is as good or better than I thought it would be. And I'm really enjoying it. And so, that's why I'm really excited for part two. And I feel like for me, it's the perfect middle ground of Oscar buzzy, but also blockbuster, and it's like sci-fi genre. Like to me, it kind of straddles both of my interests in that way, in a really nice way. So yeah, Dune part two, it's gonna be great.
I mean, I disagree with absolutely none of the things that you said, including the very happy memories. The only down part of all of it was the night that we went to go see it was also the night the Red Sox were eliminated from the playoffs, and it was like I knew they were losing, and it was like I'm going to this movie even though like as a good fan I should be watching. I should postpone and watch this game, but I need to see this. This is the way to see it because was still being pretty a bunch of chicken about COVID stuff. It's like we're in a theater, it'll be safe. This is going to be great. Drove down, blown away. Yeah, like feel like we both got to we were sitting close enough that we got to get like the cackles like of like enjoyment from hearing each other just enjoy it, and then we also got to sort of not spar, but we got to sort of talk with the people that were just like, I wasn't good, I didn't get it, and we were like, what are you talking about? Like it was so good, you're wrong, and they were like, yeah, man, I don't know. So it was just really fun. It was like I don't know if it was like the first movie I went to see in the theater. I think it was the first like new movie. I had gone to see like some old movies being shown like right post vaccination. But yeah, that was God. It was so good. And yeah, I mean, look, I'm not regretting that I skipped it. But I'm also, I mean, it's weird. It's like I'm happy that you have it,
This is a
as if
very
there's like 10 other players that are lined up that I don't know to draft these movies.
yeah, I was gonna say this is a very generous gift you've given me, and it has strengthened our friendship.
I'm glad because now I'm going to hurt our friendship
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
by taking a movie that I feel like is right in your wheelhouse. And for my second pick, I'm doing Past Lives, which I'm not going to say that I intended the strategy of if I do Flower Moon, then you are going to have to do Dune. And that means that I'm going to be able to do Past Lives, even though we were in agreement earlier that it's the movie that everyone is the most excited about. But I'm not upset that it turned out that way. It just the idea of that it's the movies it's being compared to, or that we were comparing it to earlier, like, oh, it could sort of be like Drive My Car, or it could kind of have this like it has this like support of something like an Everything Everywhere. Great, like that's what I want. And, I love both of those movies, and this sounds like this has the potential to be devastating and just super emotional. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see it, and glad to have it. Glad to have it on the team.
This is a great pick. This was also on my list, obviously. And see, this is the problem with like us being friends, like good friends, and then also doing this is that we know each other too well, probably.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I love this pick, and I also just the only thing I'll add to what you said was that there's kind of nothing like, and I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like part of the reason we love doing what we're talking about right now so much and kind of like following the Oscar award season and sort of like nerding out about movies that are coming out and doing this whole thing. I feel like part of that is because there's no joy quite like having a movie kind of come out of nowhere and sort of like not have any, because a lot of the movies we've been talking about today have a pedigree to them, right? Either the director, we've liked their previous work, or the cast is really stellar, or there's something about it that on paper is like, yes, that's probably going to be a great movie, or that's going to be at least a movie that I will want to see. But I feel like something like Past Lives, I remember like when I was looking at the Sundance, I mean, granted, I was not going to be able to see it, as we said earlier, but I feel like I might not have really flagged it when looking at the Sundance lineup. And so it's like one of those magical things where it's like the word of mouth picks up after people have seen it. And I really love that when movies get that. So, so yeah, it's a great pick. So that was me trying to stall to figure out what my next pick is. Although I don't know, I should just be honest with myself. I'm gonna pick Across the Spider-Verse. Like, what are we doing? I'm not gonna. You can have the more prestigious list. I'm just gonna go with my heart on this one. Though again, Spider-Verse, the Into the Spider-Verse has the same thing I was talking about with Dune, where it's to me is the perfect sort of meld of like high quality, gets the respect of people who are usually snobby about genre stuff, right? People, it's so good that people have to pay attention to it. But
Mm-hmm.
and it's straddling kind of that like awards prestige and the genre kind of pulpy blockbuster sort of feel to it. And so, the fact that this is a Spider-Man movie and an animated Spider-Man movie and is already in talks about getting it nominated and potentially winning Oscars, I think is like speaks a lot. Like that it had a lot of hurdles to overcome to get to that place.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, and so yeah, I'm super super excited about this. And again, like I really like that we're holding steady. There've been no murmurs about this not being good.
Right.
We're on track. Let's
Yeah.
hope it stays that way.
I mean, this is going to be redundant to be like, great pick. I mean, great pick. It's another good job choosing another movie we both really like, or we both expect to really like. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what else there is to add, but which is weird because I really want more things to say because I don't know where to go next. Because behind the scenes, on my perspective, this is how I'll buy time. I've got two movies that I don't think are coming out, and so, like this year, or they're unlikely to. So I don't know if I really want to pick them right here. The movie that like strategically I feel like I should pick, I do not want to take in a classic, big picture draft of like Amanda Dobbins getting. Not that you would get whiny and pouty about it, but like you would be justified in being whiny and pouty if you took if I took the next movie on my list. So I have two picks. I'm trying to figure out I'm going to do it. I'm taking Napoleon. I'm taking Ridley Scott's
Ooh.
Napoleon, which it feels maybe a reach. I don't know. This could be because I only for the first time watched Barry Lyndon recently, which is not the sort of replacement Kubrick movie for Napoleon, but in my mind, they're always that concept is somewhat connected because that was the time in his life when he was really working on that movie. And I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna end up being like, yes, the Ridley Scott movie, but I'm putting a lot of faith in the Last Duel, Ridley Scott, and I'm putting a lot of faith in wanting to watch Joaquin Phoenix in this kind of role. I feel like he's been the sort of like inward self-crunched loser guy who's like freaking out, whether it's the Joker or Beau is Afraid, that I want him to sort of be the like supremely confident guy, who again, almost harkening back to his Gladiator, potentially
I
harkening
was
back to
just
his
about to
Gladiator
ask.
performance.
I was just about to ask, was his first big break in Gladiator? I can't remember other roles before that he would have
I
had.
mean, some might argue his first big break was when he was still Leaf Phoenix as the child in Parenthood, but I don't think that's true. I just do love that he was in Parenthood as the little kid, and he's great in it. But I think so, right? I mean, there probably were like one or two other movies, but I feel like that was when it was like, no, it's River Phoenix's brother, and he's like legit. That my memory was Gladiator was the sort of big breakthrough for him. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm already doubting myself about choosing it. But that was when I had pulled together my list. I put Napoleon up kind of high, so I'm gonna stick with it. And we'll hope it's good and hope it's something I like.
All right, my next pick. I feel like now I have to do like a curveball pick
Okay.
because my first two picks are very predictable. And I'm on the verge of making another super predictable pick, but I feel
I'm
like
gonna
I might
warn you, if you don't make the predictable pick, though, I might not have no recourse but to take it from
have to
you.
take it. Ah.
So,
And it's
but
like
then again,
who do we want Greg to get mad at? I guess is maybe the question here. And that doesn't narrow it down completely, to be honest.
true.
But
That's not an intentional mind game. I'm just being honest with you. I don't know if I can hold back another round.
that's true. That's true. But maybe we're not talking about the same thing, and then you're
That's also possible.
all right. You know what? I feel like I have to stick with, and I now feel like we're falling into the Sean Fennessy, Amanda Dobbins pattern because I'm like, I just gotta go with, I gotta be me.
You gotta go with your heart.
And so okay, I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna do Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Oh, we were not talking about the same movie.
We were not talking about the same movie. Oh
No.
well. Okay.
But good.
So I almost didn't put this on here because I'm really trying to manage my expectations for this movie.
Yeah.
And so this is a hope dicting kind of situation where I'm like, if I put this on my list, maybe that means it will be amazing. And the other thing is, shout out to our mutual friend Jim Clements, who's never going to listen to this.
He should.
And so I'll be really surprised if he does. And he's like, "Hey, wait, you offended me on your podcast." But he usually, among our friend group, is the harshest critic, and the kind of, I don't want to call him a hater because that's uncalled for.
But he's also not a hater. Like if there was someone in our group who would be called the hater, it would definitely be him.
Sure. Yeah. He'd be the lovable hater.
Sure.
And so I ran into him the other day and we're catching up on chatting about movies and TV, and we started talking about Dial of Destiny, and he unsolicited said, "That looks like it's going to be really good, doesn't it?"
Yeah.
And
I
I
had
was
the same
just like,
conversation with him.
Okay. So for that reason, in that moment, I was like, if Jim is saying that it's going to be good, it's okay for me to think it's going to be good, right? And that was like the last straw, because before that it was like, well, James Mangold they're not going to give him another Star Wars movie, right? If he totally flubbed this one. And then before that, I was like trying to use the Cannes film premiere at our last time we recorded, I think, use the Cannes premiere that it's going to have as a sign that, like, oh, they wouldn't put a bad movie premiering at Cannes, right? And in which case, like, like there's evidence to the contrary potentially. So yeah. And so, like, I think we've been building to this moment.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, no, it's okay for me to be optimistic about this movie.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is where we come full circle, where I'm just totally letting my genre bias take over.
It's fine. I have no problem with that.
I feel like this is not going to spoil a potential pick of yours, but I almost, as I was vamping, I almost went La Chimera. Because that's essentially like highbrow Indiana Jones, I think, is what it's going to be. So that's my to reference another Ringer podcast. Mallory Rubin on the Ringerverse likes to do what she calls a smuggle, where she picks one thing but then she really smuggles in something else. And so this is my smuggling this movie into my third pick. So if you don't know, La Chimera is a film starring Josh O'Connor, who recently played Prince Charles on The Crown and was great, and Isabella Rossellini.
Hello.
And legend icon. I don't need to say much more about that. And the premise is a young British archaeologist gets involved in an international network of stolen Etruscan artifacts.
Yes, please.
Sign me up.
Yep.
Like, Like how can that not be amazing? So unless it's more like if we're going more National Treasure than Indiana
Right.
Jones,
Or
then maybe
Lara
not.
Croft Tomb Raider.
Yeah, then that could be a problem. But wait, I actually don't remember because I'm not familiar with the director.
I am also not.
Maybe they're not
This
known.
was in like it was on our list. Oh, it's not even coming up here. But it wasn't. It was one of those movies where I was like, well, that sounds like it could be really interesting. I look forward to hearing more about that. Directed by Alice Rohrwacher is her name, and it looks like Mubi is involved.
Hmm.
It's no, well, at least it's listed on Mubi. Oh, because I guess they list all the movies at Cannes on their page. Mubi, a great service that is I recommend.
No
Please,
free ads, PC.
please sponsor us. I was fishing for
Oh, I see.
for sponsoring. Yeah, I don't know this. Oh, she directed Le Pupille, which was one of the shorts, I believe, that got
Oh, that's
nominated
right. Hmm.
this past year, and also a movie called The Wonders, which I believe is somehow connected to La Chimera. I could be wrong. I might be wrong about that. There were a bunch of movies that had the word wonder in it a few years ago, and one of the movies I was looking at that's coming out is like in the same universe as the director's earlier movie that featured the word wonder. So maybe that's here, or maybe not. I don't know.
The other thing is that Neon has the rights to this, so that could mean it's got a lot of potential awards wise because they do okay.
Yeah.
Or it could just end up on Hulu.
Right. It's
the
on
other
on Hulu, and everyone thinks about it for 2 days. So this was our rundown of La Chimera, your pick for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Whoops.
No, it's good. I didn't have Indy on my short list, sort of for the like. I had the Jinx problem where I was just like, I'm not putting it on the list. I'm not taking it because if I take it and it's bad, I'll feel terrible.
Yeah, that's what I should have done.
So I think this is a good definitional dynamic of your hope casting, wish casting of like, I'm going to manifest this to be good, and me, like, already having referenced the Red Sox, like hiding in a corner of just like, if I don't think something good could happen, then I'm not going to stop it from happening. Trying to manifest it is only inviting sorrow upon me. So that was not the movie that I was referring to, but yeah, I mean, again, I ran into our same friend. We had the same conversation of just like, what looks bad about this? Like nothing. There's nothing about it that doesn't seem good.
The de-aging doesn't even bother me. Like it's just,
no, it looks great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that like, I don't want to dig into it, and I don't want to know before I see it too much. But it's just sort of like, are we just flashing back, or is the dial involved like time travel? Like, is he gonna go back in time? And if so, like, is that gonna be a thing?
I think yes.
But I feel like the only reason to be nervous about this is that the last movie also seemed like it could be cool and then wasn't that good. So
to be
we'll
clear,
see.
it's not as, because I know I kind of slandered it last time we recorded, but I think it's people are too harsh on it. It's not as bad as most people say, but it's also not good.
I feel like where I end up on it is people are about the correct level of harsh on it, but mostly for reasons that they shouldn't be worried about. Like, whatever, the aliens don't bother me. It's more the like lack of a cohesive story, and then the ultimate lack of like trying to sort of thread too many things together because they couldn't decide what story they wanted, so they just kind of mashed it all in. And then there's like a lack of agency in the last part, which you can also say about Raiders of the Lost Ark, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. We'll get into all this in our Indiana Jones preview episode.
I was going to say, what this probably means is we just need to do a separate episode just about Indiana Jones.
Yep.
Maybe even a series.
I'm not going to pull all my new Adventure Series figures from this shelf, but it's within arm's reach. So keep putting those figures out, Hasbro. Nice. I'm not buying the dial. I'll say this, similar to not picking it in the draft. I'm not buying the 2 Dial of Destiny figures until I see the movie, because I don't want to commit lest it end up being something I
That's
don't
smart.
necessarily like. And I'll just say one last thing, even though like we shouldn't because this is going long enough. We also saw the debut performance of one of the songs from that another Jen and PT and others outing was John Williams at the Hollywood Bowl. He played Phoebe Waller-Bridger's character's Helena, where he played her theme during the show, and it was lovely.
And it was beautiful. And it gave me and again, I'm just looking for things to give me hope. But but I remember hearing that and being like, "Oh, like this," because I feel like the preamble that we had gotten for that was a lot of old Hollywood soundtracks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like John Williams had sort of curated songs that he like scores that he had not written but were sort of his favorite kind of some of his inspirations. And so when I first heard it, it really hits that like old Hollywood nostalgia button when you hear it of
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, like we're back to like, and then I'm like, yes, Phoebe Waller-Bridge could totally be like a Katharine Hepburn
Yeah,
figure in this movie. I love it. Let's do this. So yeah, I think yeah, that was
it
a
could
great
be
that
good.
was a great that was a great Hollywood Bowl. Really delivered.
He's
John
doing it
Williams.
again in July this year instead of waiting for Labor Day. So we'll talk off mic and or probably on mic, but just not recording.
Yes.
So look, I did the best I could to not take this. Maybe you won't be mad because you got indie, and I respect that. I'm taking How Do You Live with my fourth pick.
I know.
Uh,
Okay. Yeah.
I
I
don't.
thought that
That
might be the
was
other one we were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like I feel like a real like really a faker at this point. Like as someone who is not like as seeped in the world of Miyazaki movies as you are, but I'm very excited for this, and it's I think it's going to be amazing, and I feel like a big jerk for somehow having it, but it's the fourth round, so like you did have plenty of time.
It's okay.
Um,
The only reason I didn't pick it earlier because I was very close to picking it for at number 3. You're not wrong,
mm,
but I was like 2 animated features back to back. That might
fair.
be an imbalance. I was trying to balance out my
That's fair.
list. So
I like
that's the
that.
only reason. Otherwise, yeah. So I'm not mad. I'm glad. Similar to how you gifted me Dune, I am happy to gift you How Do You Live.
This
And
is the
the other thing too is I feel like I'm just holding my heart in a chamber, like in a compression chamber until I see this movie.
mhm.
Even more so than like Indiana Jones, I'm okay getting hyped about, but How Do You Live? I want to make sure I go into it with a pure heart and mind, where I'm not like overly like where I'm not expecting any particular
Right.
thing.
This
You know what I mean? Because I feel like I did that with The Wind Rises, uh, and it was fine, but it was not as like I wasn't gushing over it like the way I gush over other Miyazaki movies. So
I feel like The Wind Rises has aged well. I'm just going to say that. I
yeah,
don't
no,
know
it's
when
a
you
very
last went
good
back to
movie.
it,
It's a
but
very good movie. It just didn't rise to the level of some of my all-time favorite Miyazaki movies, and so I don't want to corner myself that way again. So that's why
fair.
yeah.
That's fair. I will also say, and this is terrible coming straight off my like. I don't want to jinx things. I do feel like this is terrible. So I'll just say it. It will feel worse if the Miyazaki movie isn't very good than it will if the new Indiana Jones movie isn't very good. Because it was already sort of
Ooh.
like, look, we've got 3 Indiana Jones movies, and really, like, even one of those is like, okay, that like, and we can just sort of keep those. They're very sort of like in like a time span. It's fine. You can segment them away, but there is something about just like, and he comes back from retirement, and he's got one more movie in him, and like, what if it's only okay? That would be like a
Sure.
little bit,
The
that'd be
stakes are
more of
higher,
a
yeah.
bummer. Yeah, I think the stakes are a little higher, um but then there's also like, oh, but there's like, again, like 3 good Indiana Jones movies. There's what, like a dozen good Miyazaki movies. So he's already won. He's already won the game. What would you like for your next pick, Jane?
This is a tough one. Because there's you added a bunch of movies to our shared Google Doc.
I did.
And that was really throwing me, and like, oh no, I forgot about all these movies that might be coming out. And now that is making me question my initial choices. But I'm gonna go again. I'm gonna be true to myself.
Do it.
I'm gonna pick David Fincher's The Killer.
Yes.
Which honestly, like when we were talking earlier, does not have a ton of buzz, surprisingly, considering it's David Fincher. But I feel like David Fincher has had a bad history with the Oscars, like because Mank was his last Oscar contender, and it famously got shut out, I believe.
I think
Or
it
did it
got
win only?
cinematography.
It got some. Maybe it only got one, but it was like
Yeah.
people were like, "It's gonna sweep," and then it quickly went from "It's gonna sweep" to "Oh, it's only getting one or nothing." So, um, I feel like since then Oscar pundits are not willing to trade in David Fincher movies.
Right. It won two. I'm just looking it up. It won cinematography and it won production design. But that was a fade. Like it had been,
Yeah, like it was like
thought of. It was going to be like much bigger than that.
So, why am I excited about this movie? Because it's David Fincher, but more specifically, David Fincher going back to his murder roots. To be honest. And so, like, I mean, Seven is the one that everybody references as being his masterpiece. I feel like I even loved Mindhunter, which was the Netflix series that he did about serial killers.
No shame in that. That show was great.
I was really sad that got canceled. And so I'm just really happy to learn that he's coming back with another film that's about a killer. So
I'll also point out Zodiac, which got slept on certainly by the Academy, and I will admit by me. I didn't see that for a couple of years, and I'm blown away. That may be my favorite Fincher movie.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And this one is also I haven't read the graphic novel or comic book that it's based on, but it is an adaptation of a French comic book that supposedly is people love. So I was just everything about this sounds great and sounds like something I would like. So that therefore I'm putting it on my list.
I love it. I mean, it is interesting of just sort of like who's talking, why is no one talking about this? Like it's almost like forgotten in the conversation. I do wonder if part of that is in terms of like any sort of Oscar award sort of prognosticating discourse, is that it's a Netflix movie. Those Netflix in general kind of struggles to get, they haven't won the big prize, and you kind of end up focusing on just one or two things. And I wonder if people are like, okay, it's not going to be this. This one's going to just sort of whatever be there.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great choice. I feel like, again, it's tough when there's there's all this like blossoming new young talent that is directing interesting things. It's as it's how I felt picking Ridley Scott of anyway, Ridley Scott, a little bit of anyway, David Fincher, but it's David Fincher. He's good at this, and he's back. He's in his wheelhouse. So why not?
Yeah. It also has Brad Pitt behind it. His production company, Plan B Entertainment, I feel like is on board. So
yeah,
again,
it looks good. Okay, this is tough because what I want to do right now is smuggle my four also ran choices, but yes. I don't know. This is why it almost is better to have the last pick. But I'm going to be true to my heart, and what my heart currently is really saying is just Napoleon was a weird choice, and you should have gone with one of these other smaller movies. But I really didn't think I would I didn't think How Do You Live would be on the board in the fourth round. I'm analyzing my draft already. So I felt like I had to take that, but I had these a few smaller movies that I was maybe going to take to round out so I could build to my fifth one being the me being me choice. But I can't do that. So I got to eschew all these small movies, and I have to do my big genre blowout for this, which is Mission: Impossible Dead Reckoning, Part 1, which
is that really the title?
That is actually the title, and it's insane, an insane title for an insane movie, starring an insane man. And I couldn't be more excited for this. I do think, obviously my heart is if I could only pick one like franchise, I would always sort of pick Star Wars, even if they're not releasing movies anytime in the immediate future. But I think if it's a sort of like, well, but like, what about just like a recent franchise? It's between John Wick and the Mission Impossible movies, and especially just sort of once Christopher McQuarrie came in as sort of one of the writers with the Ghost Protocol, the fourth one, and he sort of slid into the writer director Tom Cruise whisperer seat. These movies are bonkers. They're absolutely insane, and I love them. They're a great time. I do not know. I think there are people who are just sort of like, well, Top Gun Maverick, so maybe this is the Mission Impossible movie. Blah blah blah. We'll have some Academy chances. I don't think it will. Beyond maybe visual effects or some other sound, I could see it getting some buzz there. So I don't think it's going to get a lot of awards things. It's just going to be a movie I'm going to go and see on a really big screen. And just again, like I said in the John Wick episode, just the cackle per minute ratio is going to be the rate's going to be real high. I'm just going to be enjoying myself the whole time.
So here's where I make a confession where we lose all of our listeners. I have never seen any of the Mission Impossible movies after the first one.
I mean, I think what you're saying is, we have to do like a Mission Impossible. That's like, maybe that's our first like watch along,
Okay.
or we just have to do a Mission Impossible recap.
We'll have to include Greg as well, because I have already, independently of this conversation, promised him that I will catch up. I will watch all of the movies.
I have a Blu-ray set that only has the first 5, and I have the 6th one independently. You're welcome to borrow any of them, in case you don't know how to access movies on the internet. But I will say the second one is easily the weakest, which is a bummer because it's John Woo. So it's tough if you go back and watch the first one again. It's very 90s in a fun way. The second one I feel like is a little tough to deal with, but like even the third one, which is J.J. Abrams, like has a all-time villain performance from Philip Seymour Hoffman, and like at that point, if you're hopefully you're enjoying yourself. I guess if you're just sort of like, this is very dumb. They're movies that are very dumb, but are incredibly funny. I look at the when I saw Dungeons and Dragons, there was a trailer for Fast 10, a movie we have not discussed that may get low level whatever.
I have also not seen.
Yeah, probably. And I'm just like, these movies are so stupid. Why does anybody like them? And then I realize I'm like, oh, it's because the same lizard part of humans' brains that makes me want to watch the Mission Impossible movies. But I like spies and masks and like heists more than I like cars and vroom and that kind of spectacle. So yeah, they're great. They're great. We'll cover them. We're gonna cover them on the pod, and you're gonna like it.
Okay,
you're gonna like it.
So it's down to me, right?
It is. One last pick.
I'm having a hard time with this because I feel like there's a lot of pressure to have this be a great pick and a pick that will round out my list. And so, do I go with without spoiling what I'm thinking about?
It's Fast 10. Just take Fast 10. You want to do it.
I feel like that would be confusing considering all the other things I pick. I have one that is like pretty obscure, but I only found out about when I was doing what little prep I did for this podcast episode. That like could be based on the description, could be terrible, like really terrible, or could be absolutely amazing. So that's like, I feel like I have a very risky pick, but maybe for the sake of podcasting and drafting this list, could be a really good pick. And then I also have because I feel like you did a really good job of making your list actually also very awards contentious. or
I
like
mean,
contendery.
it doesn't have to be, but
Yeah, but you did it. Your list is gonna win more Oscars than mine probably,
yeah.
and that's fine. Um, but
Mission
but I
Impossible sweep.
but I feel like, do I use this last pick to compensate for that and have something that I feel like I'm both actually genuinely very interested in, but interested in more from my Oscars brain than from maybe my, what the rest of this list would might indicate. I'm using as my guiding light. So that's kind of what I'm down to. So maybe, regardless of whichever one I pick, I'll mention the other one. The other thing too is I'm like, I don't have any female directors on this list, unless you count
Mm.
my smuggle, like Chimera. I think, right? Because it's like Denis Villeneuve. Wait, who's directing Across the Spider-Verse?
Great question. Hold, please. Name the rest of your movies. Oh, it's Joaquin Dos Santos, Kemp Powers, and Justin K. Thompson.
Okay, so still no women.
Yeah, no women, sorry.
James Mangold, David Fincher. Yeah, so I feel like for that reason alone, I probably should pick my other pick because it is a good pick and I would be happy about it. I just
Mhm.
am really tempted to make this other pick, but I can give it a shout out for sure. But let me actually check. Yeah, no, that's not the filmmaker for this other pick is also male. So all right, for the sake of, because it's so close between these two, I'm gonna use the diversity of my list as a motivating factor. And I'm gonna pick Emerald Fennell's Saltburn. Um, a movie that I know very little about, honestly,
Mhm.
but because I feel like Emerald Fennell is such an interesting filmmaker and writer, like director and writer, um, that I feel like there's a certain, I wanted to represent something on here that, like, even if I'm not super interested in the premise of this movie, but it's like a college student becomes obsessed with an aristocratic woman or something. Like, it just, like, I'm like, if you just pitch that to me with no
Mhm.
other information, I'd probably be like, it's okay. I don't need to see that. But the fact that it's Emerald Fennell and, she's somehow managed to create promising young women, but then also be Camilla on The Crown and then direct episodes of The Crown. Like, I just, like,
Right.
she's a fascinating creator to me. And I feel like she's on the, if Saltburn is as good as I think it might be, and it is and makes as big of a splash as I think it then I think that she's on the cusp of like heading into the stratosphere in terms of recognition. So I'm gonna bet big on her.
I I mean, I think it's a good choice. It feels like it could be a good movie. It's one of those things where it was like it got some, like, people were like, and Saltburn, like, what's going on with Sundance? And there was no, like, there wasn't like a huge sort of push. I kind of feel like Past Lives sucked up a lot of the
Right.
air of it, but there also was no like Saltburn's not very good. It was just sort of like, and Saltburn, like, that was great. And was sort of, sort of floating out there. So I feel like it's in, potentially in a good pocket of not overhyped and also not disparaged. So that could be good. That could be
Yeah,
really good for it.
we'll see. So the pick that could have been,
Mm-hmm.
and again, a film I had never heard of until looking up, what are movies that are coming out this year? It's called True Love,
Oh.
and it is directed, written, and co-produced by Gareth Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
Who can you tell listeners where they would know Gareth Edwards from?
I mean, they would know him from mostly directing Rogue One, a Star Wars story, as well as the 2013 or 2014 version of Godzilla. I forget what year it was, but the
Right, the
American
good one.
Godzilla. Yeah. Well, I mean, some of us will go to bat for Godzilla King of the Monsters, but in a sense that it's not a good movie, but it had some real big monsters, and they were fighting each other. I don't know if do I have to explain that? But it's not good. But I had a great time. But yes, the one with Aaron Taylor Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen and Bryan Cranston and Ken Watanabe, et cetera, et cetera. And he had done like a small monster movie before then, I believe, called Monster. And I mean, he almost directed all of Rogue One. I believe that Tony Gilroy came in and directed a lot of the reshoots, and apparently Dave Filoni directed the Darth Vader scenes at the end. But he nevertheless he did Rogue One, a Star Wars story, on officially.
So this is also a sci-fi film,
Mm-hmm.
though no one seems to know more than that, like in terms of what it's about. But this is the cast. So it's John David Washington,
Mm-hmm.
Gemma Chan, Allison Janney,
Yep.
Ken Watanabe,
Finchy himself,
and Benedict Wong, who is Wong from the MCU.
Yeah, no, I love it.
People
Well,
don't
and
know.
also I'm looking at the list and I'm seeing you said Ken Watanabe and I said Finchy himself, which is not Ken Watanabe. It's Ralph Ineson, who was Finchy on the British version of The Office,
I skipped over
and
him.
is
Sorry,
is in Game of Thrones and is in a bunch of British things.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
that guy.
that's
Okay,
crazy.
yeah.
That's a great cast.
And it's Greg Fraser is one of the cinematographers
Yeah.
who did both Dune Part 1 and well, I guess this should have been my pick. And now that I'm laying it out there, Dune Part 1 and the Batman,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Could have been nominated.
Could have been nominated. Should have been nominated. The Batman is a beautiful film. So yeah, that's like, and again, I don't think I've heard about this movie from anybody.
No, I haven't. I have not. I didn't even know Gareth Edwards was working. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
That's great. I've got 4 movies I want to honorable mention. I don't know if you have any extras that were like besides that, but like again, like game theorying out of like if the Miyazaki movie wasn't there, I think what I would have taken, knowing that Mission Impossible would have been on the board later. I didn't know you hadn't seen them, but I feel like I had sensed that you did not care. Like it had never sort of came up in any conversation with you. So the movie that I think I would have taken there is, I don't know if it's coming out this year, but it's called Poor Things. And it's a Yorgos Lanthimos movie. And I mean, the phrase is an upcoming science fiction romance film. And it's essentially a Victorian tale of like someone Frankensteining a young woman back to life. And the young woman's Emma Stone. And I'm assuming Willem Dafoe is the doctor because he's Dr. Godwin Baxter. Mark Ruffalo, Rami Youssef, Jared Carmichael, Margaret Qualley, Catherine Hunter. This is insane. Like this is an insane sounding cast. And it's Yorgos, who has done The Lobster, Killing of a Sacred Deer. He did The Favorite. So this is Emma Stone reuniting with him from The Favorite. So yeah, if I could go back and I could do my draft again, I would draft Poor Things instead of Napoleon. But my strategizing of how things would play out didn't unfold. And you had to play the ball where it lay. But this is my like, and I almost took this instead of Mission Impossible, where I was like, but then I was like, but then I don't really have the like fun blockbustery movie that I'd want to have on my list. So, but this sounds incredible. There's no discussion of when it's coming out. It's going to be a Searchlight movie. So again, it could just end up dropped on Hulu with no fanfare, which would be terrible. It could be this year's Prey, which is an excellent Predator sequel for anyone who hasn't watched it. That seems that's probably the if I had one honorable mention, like your now I've already lost the name of it. The one True Love, the Gareth Edwards.
Yeah. Which again, the title might need to be workshopped because I feel like
they could. Yeah, it feels a little. That's going to be lost in an SEO world. So that's why my honorable mention. The other ones I just want to bring up that I had in discussion here. A movie called Rustin, which I had not heard about until again we were putting together this list. It's a biopic directed by George C. Wolfe, who's mostly a playwright, but he did Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. He directed Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. And it's it's the story of a gay civil rights activist named Bayard Rustin, who worked with Martin Luther King Jr., helped organize the March on Washington. Coleman Domingo is potentially in the conversation. He's going to have like an Al Pacino in 92 or a Scarlett Johansson in I think 2019, where he could be nominated in lead and supporting for Color Purple and lead for this movie. And Audra McDonald is maybe going to get an EGOT if she gets any juice, playing Ella Baker in a supporting role. Chris Rock is in it. Glenn Turman, who is a great actor. Jeffrey Wright seems to be in a small role. He's way down in this cast list, but he's there. He's present. So it's a Netflix movie. So again, it might kind of just come and go, but it's from the Obama's production company as well. So they might get some, a real big push here. So it was on the list. If I was, I want to give it a shout out. I wanted to get an honorable mention because I think it looks like it could be really good.
Yeah, no, that's great. I guess, do I have honorable mentions? I was tempted to put Wonka on my list.
I love it. Love that.
But again, that's a huge gamble. Timothy Chalamet as Willy Wonka. But it's either going to be amazing or it's going to be really weird, and not in a good way. So that's, I think, why that didn't end up kind of really in contention on my list. The other one I was tempted to kind of include was Challengers, which is the Zendaya Josh O'Connor. Maybe I'm just really into Josh O'Connor right now. The tennis movie. Like, why are they in a tennis movie?
I don't know, but it sounds great. It sounds like a good premise for a movie that's either just a straight up comedy or like an actual like emotional experience with humor mixed in.
Yeah. And I think we'd be bad friends to Greg if we didn't mention Asteroid City.
When I said I had 4 movies, I wanted to say that was the 4th. Is Asteroid City. Which is the new Wes Anderson movie. There's some degree of I can feel this way too, of just sort of like, yep, it's another Wes Anderson movie. He's doing Wes Anderson-y things. And then I go and I see like The French Dispatch and I'm like, this is a masterpiece. I love this. Jeffrey Wright, robbed. Screenplay nomination, robbed. This is, that movie was great. Wes Anderson does what he does really well. And Asteroid City looks really good. I do just want to mention, he has a second movie that is scheduled to come out this year.
Oh, that's right.
In the fall, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, which, I don't know if that's actually, they're going to hold it or not. Probably depends how Asteroid City does.
Is Benedict Cumberbatch in that?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
And for all, like everything I was reading the whole thing, I'm just like, well, this must be an animated movie with these people and this story. And I don't think it is. I think it's just a Roald Dahl adaptation. That's
right. I was like, is this going to be like Fantastic Mr. Fox? Yeah.
Yeah. So I agree that we have to mention that there are a bunch of movies that look really good. The other one that I did actually have written down that you had put on the list, so I apologize if I'm taking this from you. Unknown if it's coming out this year, but Blitz, which is the World War II movie that's coming out, written and directed by Steve McQueen, Saoirse Ronan, and Stephen Graham and Aaron Kellyman of Nerd product fame. It's Steve McQueen, so I'm interested. I want to see whatever he puts out. So, and Steve McQueen in World War II seems like that. That could get some Oscar traction in a way that for some reason Widows didn't, even though Widows also a masterpiece.
Yeah. All right. I think we did it. I think that covers it.
Yeah.
This was a lot. We're pushing 2 hours now. We've passed the 2 hour mark recording, so I think we need to wrap up. So, I think the headline here is there's a lot of exciting movies that are going to be coming out in 2023. Can't wait to see them.
Movies are good. We like movies.
So to close us out, PT, where can our listeners find you on the internet?
They can look for me. Will they find me? They can look for me on Instagram and on Letterboxd, PTMCNIFF. I did also set up a Substack. All I put on there was maybe I'll do something with this. And I don't even remember the name of it. So, next time I'll tell you the name of it, and what the address might be. But if anything's actually posted there, then I'll let you know. But yeah, you can find me in those places and contact me there if you would like.
And folks can find me on Instagram at Sopchockchai, SOPCHOCKCHAI. and on the Long Take on Substack. Thanks for VT. This was really fun. I'm glad you suggested that we do a draft.
Thank you so much for having me on, for hosting me. Dune.
All right.
Dune.
Thanks, everybody. Until next time. Thank you for listening. You can follow The Long Take on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. Subscribe for free to receive reviews of films with Oscar buzz, as well as new films and series from pop franchises like Star Wars and Marvel.